Yeah, what up, party people? It's your boy Hakeem Green, Channel Live and Direct, BDP, all day, every day. All we do is spark Madism. But on today's show, Madism TV, we have the special 24 Hours of Peace edition. 24 Hours of Peace is a initiative that was created by myself, uh, along with some other activists from Newark, New Jersey. Let me fix my collar. From Newark, New Jersey. And we created this organization, this initiative to support the current Southwark, the current then past back when we started it in 2010, Southwark Councilman Ras Baraka, who was also the principal at Central High School. He is now the current mayor of Newark, New Jersey. He created this initiative, Violence is a Public Health Issue, which really just activated all aspects of the Newark community, from education, law enforcement, social work, activist community, religious community, clergy, the medical community, hospitals, all aspects of the Newark community had us come in to think and strategize over ways we could, affect change with violence, spreading peace, love, unity, safely having fun. Of course, that's the core mantra for hip hop culture. So we created this organization, this initiative company called 24 Hours of Peace, which is to push, to brand peace, love, unity, safely having fun. We ran it 10 years straight. And then last year, of course, was the COVID lockdown. So we weren't able to do anything. It's a 24-hour peace festival. And it is really awesome. So today's show, we have the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, who was instrumental, was the spark, the spark to that fire, at 24 Hours of Peace fire. And he's going to be on the show today. And we're going to get into how 24 Hours of Peace was created, what it was created to support, and, of course, the mayor's personal history. And we're going to also discuss Dr. Martin Luther King and his impact on electoral politics. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. Right now, I'm looking for some videos to show. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just inviting people to the house, to the building, so we can get an audience in here. I encourage you to do the same thing. 24 Hours of Peace, Keen, Green. And thank you. Oh, yeah, I definitely know, because yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm going to find something really, really nice, line some videos up, and just run them, Let's start with this one first. So yeah, y'all, just do me a favor, folks who are in the building, invite, share, bring people to this conversation. In about 10 minutes, we're going to have Mayor Ras Baraka on, and we're going to be discussing some really, key issues, perspectives, just going to get into it. And with that said, I'm going to run this.
From the streets with Mr. Green.
All right, so this episode is a little bit different. I got the sounds from two different places. The first thing is from Toronto, Canada. There's this dope saw player.
Thank you.
Oscar, a street performer. I do that in my life, but this is my last creation. The tree play the saw. That normally the saw kill the tree.
He had some background music that he made for himself, but I sampled it from the speaker and I chopped it up. KRS added these drums. Then this little bass line. So with the sample and the drums and the bass line, all right, boom. So that's the main part of the beat. The next part we got in New York and Jersey. We're blessed, man. We got to spend 2 days with KRS-One while he was in Newark with Hakeem Green. They were helping Ras Baraka gain support, and he actually won. So KRS and Hawk actually helped the guy win and be mayor of Newark.
I'm KRS-One, the holder, money folder. Oh, you want a fresh style? Let me show you. Maybe that's the chorus. Fresh style, let me show you. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. Maybe that's the chorus.
The sample and the drums and the bass and then that chorus.
You want a fresh style? Let me show you. You want a let me show you. Maybe that's the chorus.
And then finally I just sampled a little bit of the speech that he was giving.
Hip hop, and I didn't realize this until years later. Hip hop created a new reality. Hip hop. And I didn't realize this until years later. Hip hop created a new reality.
So with the samples together,
Hip hop, and I didn't realize this until years later. Hip hop created a new reality.
all right, so boom, the beat's done. Now we're gonna get in the studio with Hakeem for another day and get him to spit a full verse on it.
They told us dance like this.
Yo, styles upon styles is what I have. You can't join the cipher if you don't know the math. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, freedom is the path. The game power, but the power that got you giving up your ass. Give it up to the blast master, the t-shirt.
Hip hop, and I didn't realize this until years later. Hip hop created a new reality. They told us dance like this. We said, no, this is the way it feels. It feels like I should be breaking. It feels like I should be doing something else. I don't know about the waltz and the this and the, I don't know about this holding the girl and me dancing. Like, I don't know. It just don't feel right to me. I feel like I should be looking at my partner. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. Maybe that's the chorus. KRS and Hop, money for the whole. You want a fresh style? Let me show you.
Let me show you.
Hold up, green. Money folder. You want a fresh style? Let me show you.
Styles upon styles is what I have. You can't join the cipher if you don't know the math. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, freedom is the path. You gain power, but power that got you giving up your ass. Like a fight with kryptonite, got you sucking on the glass. Cash don't make the man, but we steady making cash. Spit flames like backdraft to avoid the backlash. You selling out your people, these niggas acting crass. Defeatist ass niggas get the last laugh. 12 years a slave like the NBA draft. I'm swift with the licks. Cash, stay around trees, uptown like I'm Shaft. Puff, puff, pass, cause all things equal. Move around with the people, spit lethal. Yo, we waking up the sheeple while the camels try to lead you through the eye of a needle.
You want a fresh style? Let me show you. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. Maybe that's the chorus. KRS and Hop, money folder, holder up the boulder. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. KRS and Hop, holder up the boulder, money folder. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. KRS-One and Hakeem. Oh man, it's the dream team, if you know what I mean. Now look, you gotta hold the mic up for the mix. KRS is 6'6". This is how I do it. See, I'm freestyle live off the tip. Everywhere I go, it's peace to Scotland Rock. So I'm in Newark, they call it the bricks. KRS-One, I don't come with treats, I come with tricks. purpose of this song right now? What should it be? Come on, tell us how. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. Maybe that's KRS and hot, money folder, holder up a boulder. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. KRS and hot, holder up a boulder, money folder. You want a fresh style? Let me show you. How many college students here? You know, when you get to your graduation, you think you're going to receive your degree. Understand what I'm saying to you right now. You are a superpower. You are a superpower. This is what hip-hop taught. This is what hip-hop is all about. Superpowers. Superpowers. Superpowers.
That's right. Hip hop is all about superpowers. Hip hop is all about tapping into oneself. You know what I mean? Hip hop is about, expressing the force that is from within and putting it through a certain lens so folks who are hip hop can recognize what it is. And we turn the whole world into hip hop. And I want y'all to recognize that. And our guest that's coming on in a few is definitely brought hip hop into, electoral politics, into city government. He's on the local scene in Newark, New Jersey, Essex County represent, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. But he's also a hip hopper. He's a hip hopper to the heart, and we're going to get into all that when we bring the brother in, the Honorable Mayor Ras Baraka. We still got a little set before he hops in, so we're going to see what it is. And we're going to see what it is. Wow. Man, they just shut me down on YouTube because I played my own song. That's crazy how they shut me down on YouTube because I played my own song. But we rocking on Facebook, so I got it nonetheless. But if somebody knows the folks over at YouTube, let them know that my name is Hakeem Green. I'm on the song. It's my record. I own the publishing on that song. So let them know. We paused on YouTube, but that's all right. We on Facebook, so I'll still get the stream, no doubt. That's what it is. My folks over here in book world, you guys hopping in and representing. Therm is in the building. Jabril Muhammad is in the building. My cousin Darren D, DJ Darren D is in the building. My cousin Edward Green is in the building, no doubt. My mother's in the building. What up, Ma? My wife is in the building. What up, Jasmine? So yeah, that's what we got going on. Let me see. I'm gonna pull up another video while we wait for the mayor to hop in. And what I want you guys to do for me is share, please. Let me see. Put up 24 hours of peace stuff so we don't have any problems. You guys can see what 24 hours of peace is all about. Let me find something really nice. Here we go. Okay.
All the way to the end. You gotta start it and you have to finish it. You gotta complete it. All the way to the end. We don't just do this as a run down here. You did this as a beginning, not an ending. years ago by Southport Councilman, then Southport Councilman Ras Baraka. It started off on Clinton Avenue. We was on Clinton Avenue for about 4 years. On Clinton Avenue, small stage. We started off with a ringer wagon. And now look where we at now. Through hard work, dedication. This is where we at now.
When I look around, all I see is people everywhere, busy living life as they see, with no conscience and no care. Gotta let them know. Gotta let them
We do this for the city. We do this for all of you. It's not for us. It's not about me. It's not about the day. It's about the youth. It's about our babies right here. It's about everybody here.
So respect. Nas and X. Hit the rage. See rage. With the legs. Open the page. Eyes through life, not through a maze. Champagne. Toast the light. Another turn.
Yeah, that's 24 hours apiece. You see it in action. You see it's about community. It's about, you know, bringing out the best in what Newark, New Jersey has to offer. We have artists come out, local artists, you know, a lot of great amateur talent. We have a lot of great professional talent come through to support. The nonprofits come out, National Action Network. They come out. They have a tech school set up in Newark, New Jersey, free of charge for all Newark residents, where they teach, you know, everything from 3D printing to what do you call it, coding, everything. You get Cisco certified, whole program. You could walk out of there, you know, ready to go to work, and that's free of charge for all Newark residents. I think 15 and older. They come out, bring out 3D printing machines and the high tech computers and the 3D glasses, and it's crazy. Community loves it. We do a late night movie night from 12 to 4 a.m. That's right, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. We got movies showing, you know, culturally relevant movies. Shaq has come in and sponsored, you know, a few years. That's dope. You know, we get the bartenders and Nikki D come out. They come out, do a whole health and wellness set up in the morning, early morning, 7 a.m. We out there, music cranked up, playing gospel and jazz and just getting the spirit right and get working out and, you know, just doing all the things to do to lead by example, to give the community examples of how they can fight back violence, fight back stress, fight back all the pressures that, you know, we find ourselves in. So that's what 24 hours apiece is about. You know, we just waiting for the mayor. I'm sure he's, you know, somewhere in Newark, New Jersey, putting out fires. You know, we're just waiting on the mayor to pop up in here. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show another video, 24 hours apiece. Let me see if I can find the Fat Joe. One year we did a whole fatherhood presentation with my boy Kobe Brown. Where we at? Yes. There we go. The level of talent that we bring out, the level of commitment from a lot of these artists in the mainstream is beyond what people want to tell you. So we want to make sure we, you know, we highlight these people. I heard something. You know what? We have to put that on pause. We got the mayor in the building. So we just gonna jump to that, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bring him on in. Yes, sir. How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
I'm good, brother. How's everything?
I'm great. You know, I thank you for taking time out. I know it's hectic where you are dealing with this, the weather first and foremost, but you know, being the executive of one of the largest cities in the country, yeah, I'm sure you're juggling constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All type of stuff going on.
Yeah. So, you know, you're on the Madism platform. You know, Madism, of course, you know, the record we put out with KRS-One some 20 some odd years ago, talking about, you know, cannabis and that whole thing. But the Madism platform is about discussing all the isms. So from racism, sexism, fascism, totalitarianism, capitalism, we've created a platform we can have those types of discussions. So, you know, hopefully we can dive right in. At some point, though, I wanted to get to Dr. King and his impact on electoral politics, which is something that I think we kind of miss in looking at Dr. King. But your personal history, I kind of wanted to get into that so our viewership could really understand, the man that is the mayor, Ras J Baraka. First of all, again, thank you for spending some time with us, but, for those who don't know, can you tell us, who you are and what inspired you to, get into electoral politics?
Yeah, well, Mayor Ras Baraka, Newark, New Jersey, born and bred here in this city. My whole family been here, probably for at least 8-9 decades, right? So, generations of us have passed through this community. I was an educator for 23 years in the city of Newark, from substitute to teacher to vice principal to principal. I went through the whole gamut. And, usually in school, you're always dealing with issues of the community, trying to make sure people have food, that people's lights were on, all kind of issues that affected education that always got me involved. Plus, I was a part of an organization called Black Nia Force in those days. Nia, one of the 7 principles of the Nguza Saba purpose. And, we would do community events. We would study on Fridays. We did all kind of things. I was in college and right out of college. And, we decided to challenge at that time Sharp James, who was the mayor since I was a little boy. Since 1986, I was on my way to college. He became the mayor, and we challenged him. I was 24 years old. We raised $10,000. We thought we were rich, and we jumped in it. And we made the ballot. So I was in the actual debates with these guys. I mean, they got funny. I had that flat top and everything.
What year was this? This is
1994.
Yeah,
I had my flat top going on at that time too. So I was in the debates with them as a young kid, man. And since that time, I just stayed engaged. I ran for office so many times, brother, and lost so many times because it was really about the journey for me, the experience, the battle, to bringing the issues to the forefront, making them respect us and what we thought and believed. All
right. So when you say the word "us," I want to make a quick point of that, and I want to tie it to, Black Nia Force. Really, Nia being purpose, which is something that a lot of us miss in life. So, discuss the power of purpose and connecting to us.
Yeah, and so that's what we had an agenda. Like, we created an agenda. We called it the People's Assembly. Even then, we came up with all this information and ideas we thought that should be put forth from folks in the community and the organization that I was in. And we wanted to put those issues to the forefront, right? And we believed that in order to get the issues on the forefront, you had to be in it to win it. You had to get in the race, because people won't listen to you unless you force them to take you seriously. And so we were in it. And what I learned quickly, though, in politics is that we say us a lot, and us is usually the 15 people you know what I mean? And I had to, and we kind of look at the world through that lens. Right. And then you get involved and you realize that there's so many people out here who just don't believe and think what you believe and think. And so you have to organize them, right? You have to talk to people. You have to convince them. You have to educate them, and they educate you. You have to go back and forth and test your theory. If your theory is so dynamite, put it out there and let people battle it, and let people listen to it and hear it and critique it and try to put it into work. And that's basically what we were doing. During those times. So we had to win people over. And folks today, they don't understand that that's a process. They think because they got a good idea, they smart, they read a book, that people going to listen to them, and they're not listening to them because the administration or the people in charge are tricking them. And that's really not what. It's a lazy kind of thinking, and it takes real work, and it's like kind of elitist. It takes work to convince people to believe what you believe, to follow you, to understand what you understand, and to come to your side. That takes a whole lot of work to do that. especially if it's a machine of folks that have been doing the other thing for so long. So
yeah. So like looking at being a friend, I've known you for some 30 some odd years. Black Neo Force was definitely an impact on me and my 15 friends, because that inspired us to start Act Now, which is how we met KRS-One. Just that that example. But looking at your earlier years, your example was very radical, very militant, very aggressive, very challenging of the system, right? How do you balance going on the other side, and because I still see you as that, but that the other side is the other side. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a few things, man. And so one, you have to prepare people to do what they're supposed to do in their season, right? And we can't fight all fronts. If you fight all fronts, you fight none. You try to win all fronts, you win none. So you have to allow other people to fight some of those fronts, and understand that our struggle has to be a coordinated one, right? It has to be offense and defense. It has to be comprehensive, and that's important. That's what it takes. So you need people out in the street engaging the system, pushing the system, fighting against it, calling for its destruction. Even you understand what I'm saying? That's what you need. You need people out there saying that this needs to be overhauled, turned around, changed upside down.
No. To that point, because you being the executive of one of the largest cities in the United States of America, for you to say something like that, people, even if you're so frustrated, you have so much angst against the system, you're calling for the destruction of, like, how do you explain the relevancy of that to folks on your side now, on the other side? Like, what is
hard sometimes, but ultimately, like that push allows us to get things done quicker, faster. Because when you hear, you can't snap your fingers. There's no button you push and the whole thing changes, right? You're battling against a system that's been in place for centuries, right? That is fortified, that is solid and systemic, that is moving in one direction. You have to push back against it. It takes a lot of energy to exert force to stop it from moving in one direction, more energy to turn it around, and then more energy to push it back in the other direction. It's impossible for you to do that by yourself in these seats and positions that you have without aligning yourself with folks out there and being strategic. The problem is we're not strategic, right? We find ourselves at odds with each other, and our enemies get off the hook, or they continue marching forward because we don't have a full strategy, right? We might have a plan, an objective, we just don't have no strategy. And then the strategy has to align with the tactics, and I don't see that. We see it that way. So I have to hear. So let's for example, when we start talking about the whole violence is a public health issue that we've been pushing for God knows how long, that's now caught on nationally. Everybody's saying the same.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to keep that point.
Right. Yeah, I was getting beat up for meeting with gang members, writing letters, creating opportunities for conflict resolution, doing all this stuff. And a lot of people are doing it. When I came into office, we started using police funding to do specific things, small things here, small things there, just little gradual, slow steps without like causing everything to fall down on our head. Because it would, we were pushing that way. But when the people took to the streets because of George Floyd, right, it allowed us to expedite that and create an Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, something we was trying to do for the last 6-7 years. So we get to do it in a month and a half, right? Because now the sentiment has changed because the people out in the street changed it, right? And so now we can get different things done. And that's what I mean about when I say we have to have a strategy to get that done. Like people say, oh, defund the police. Like I understand that our grandmothers ain't going for that in the community because our people, we just too busy. It's too much shooting and violence going on. And we have to strategize how to reduce that in our community in order to reduce the presence of the police. But I'm not upset that people are saying defund the police, right? I'm not upset about that because ultimately it gives us cover to do what we need to do here to transform the things we need to transform.
Mhm.
Because people are out there saying defund the police, and they saying defund the police because these guys are out of hand. Now they don't want to defund the police. It's like Stokely told, or Kwame Ture used to tell the people about Martin Luther King. He said, "Bro, you better listen to this guy, because if you don't listen to him, you got to deal with me."
Word.
You know what I'm saying?
But you know what's interesting when you say defund the police, right? And you know you see the pushback against that. So when I look up successes of defund the police, the first thing that comes up is Camden, who disbanded their police department. You know, now I know there's some issues about the success, if it's a real success. There's some controversy around Camden.
Well, they just replaced the police, with another police force.
But then I look at, you know, Austin recently. You know, there's a lot, you know, some grassroots activists out there who've been able to redirect, I think, some $21 million from the police department to, you know, housing for homeless people, mental health and drug addiction programs. And that's touted as a success. I'm looking at Denver. They just had a defund the police initiative set in place where, you know, they're kind of shouting out the successes. So, you know, as much as people shy away from the term, you know, defund the police, once you get into the nitty gritty of what it actually is, it becomes more clear. But then to your point about setting up these strategies, like, you know, your own personal work has been 15, 20 years of violence as a public health issue,
right?
You know, creating, you know, support systems for folks who've been victims of violence. You know, that's not something that happened since George Floyd. You've been a part of that work. Now, you know, what inspired 24 Hours of Peace is watching the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition over the course of 5.5 years, every Wednesday, rain, hail, sleet, snow, calling attention to the, you know, the criticalness of violence in our community. That's what inspired 24 Hours of Peace. You know, we've been here, oh, they talk about police violence, but they never protest the gangbangers. They don't. That's so untrue. And I would like you to speak to that work.
That's a lie. I mean, nobody in our community want violence, right? We've been marching against violence in this community. We've been organizing against it. We just understand that the violence in our community is attached to the larger system of oppression. And to end the violence, we have to dismantle the systems that make violence a reality in our communities, right? And so what we've been trying to do is survive until that happens. We don't have the luxury to wait. And I tell people, like, you could debate ideological differences all we want, but we have to keep people alive, you know, long enough to change the system, right? So while we having this debate about changing the system, our people are dying in our community, hundreds at a time. Somebody has to intervene, right? And keep people alive and inform them and keep them well enough so they can participate in their own, like, liberation. And that's real. We've been doing that, like you said, for a very, very, very long time in our community. So it's just not true that we don't protest and speak out against the violence in our community. You know, I even get on to people in the city still. I tell them, keep the same energy. When, you know, you hit me up and you telling me the police did something, that you should do that. I'm glad you're doing that. And we need to act on it. And you're supposed to do that. But you're also supposed to have the same energy when a 2-year-old girl gets shot in your neighborhood. You got to keep that energy, because all of it is the same. It's your community, right? And we want our community to live. And we don't want our community to die by the hands of anyone, by the hands of anyone arbitrarily. We need safety in our neighborhoods. And that's why, you know, the biggest pushback I get from transforming police departments or taking money or diverting money or defunding all that is the people in the community itself, right? Our grandmothers, our mothers in our community, they don't understand that's why in the beginning I was calling it, it's like this kind of bourgeois liberal idea, because we come up with these things, but we never engage the people in our in the neighborhoods about what they want. We have this idea about what should happen, and then we throw it on people. Oh, this is the ideologically correct or right thing to do, but we never engage the grandma. Our grandmothers don't want their grandchildren beat, shot in the back, stopped by police. They don't want people choked to death. They oppose. They want Breonna Taylor's murderers to go to jail. They want police justice, but they also don't want to be busted over the head on the way to the corner store
by their children.
They don't want their grandson shot in the back by drive-by shootings, or their 2-year-old granddaughter shot in the car. You know, they don't want that either. And so we don't have the luxury to choose. Now,
you're describing something that has been a revelation to me, actually watching your campaign, your personal work. And that is, I got swept up in the conspiracy theory movement for a while. For a long time, I was deep in the conspiracy theory world, right? And in that world, you have these preconceived notions, these ideologies, these philosophies that don't really resonate in practical terms on how do we help people in real time. How do we make people's lives better in real time? And then I was able to reflect and see how the conspiracy theory was getting in the way of my own personal activity. We say, activists.
Yeah.
Activists, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's activity. It's not just sitting around kicking philosophies. Like, okay, I got this thing, and then what? What you gonna do? So, watching your own personal push through the electoral process, you being so radical, you represent a certain style of politics that's just not embraced by mainstream politics, and you see the machine, push back, and I watched what it took to win in the executive seat of one of the largest cities in the country, and it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was the actual fact of the matter, right? So violence is a public health issue. Can you talk to people about the practicality of fighting violence from, like, you organize law enforcement, the medical community, social work community, all these different communities to come in and strategize around violence. And that's what gave birth to 24 Hours of Peace. Can you give people, take the philosophy that created the practical process and what that practical process is?
Yeah, the reality is that, people, so when you talk to people before, they think that, violence is, in the eyes through white supremacy, it's a genetic deficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't never address it because people are always they're barbarians, they're animals, they're just going to kill each other. And when you start talking about violence as public health, then you have to start looking at the causes of violence, like what, and that violence moves from neighborhood to neighborhood, like what causes it, and study it in a way that you can treat it, right? You treat it like public health, right? There's intervention, there's direct treatment straight ahead, with people who are so far gone, right? And there's the education piece, like we would a campaign against HIV or campaign against coronavirus, right? It's a public health strategy, and it takes everybody to engage in it, right? To be able to reduce the violence that's going on. We know data. We know that kids that are arrested or see their siblings and fathers and parents arrested are more likely to be arrested themselves. We know that people that witness or are involved in violence are likely to get involved in violence themselves, or more violence, right? We know that kids in our community start petty crimes first and get into robbery. It's property crime and crime based on money. Then it turns into violence. And matter of fact, kids get arrested maybe 6 or 7 times in Newark before they even graduate to shooting, right? And so you can intervene in that early on, right? Now, all of this data is known data. We also know that 80% of the community doesn't experience violence at all. Like, so when people see these cities, they think the city is ravaging with violence. Well, that's not true. Whether you're talking about Camden or Trenton or LA or Newark, 80% of Newark doesn't experience a violent crime at all. The flip of that is that 20% of the city experiences 100% of the violence.
Wow.
Right. So that means if you live in that area, it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. Everything is falling apart. Right. And there's no investment, no employment, no development, and it's and the violence is on top of each other, like violence breeding more violence.
So what I want the viewership to understand is that a lot of times we say the man, or they don't want us to have anything, or it's them. Well, a lot of times it's us not taking control over our own lives, right? So you get into a position where you see the data, you see the numbers, you see the math and the science,
right? And
then you can reverse it, right? So it's not, it's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory, but it's not this all-encompassing, inconquerable thing that you can't,
we can win, and that's what people need to see.
Right.
See, the thing my father used to say, people get so radical they become paralyzed, right? And they can't help anybody. So the reality is, see, the problem with all of these conspiracy theories is you can't put your hand on the enemy. And you can't find out what the cause of this stuff is. And so now you stuck in a cycle of pain that you're saying you can't get out of because somebody just has more power, more authority. They're smarter. The mystery is too big for you to overcome. That's all BS. I don't accept that, right? Yes. I don't accept that. I think that we have the authority and the power to fight back, to change our lives, to push back against this system, to make it, to reimagine it. And that's what we should be engaged in every single day, how to make those things happen for us and our people. We don't have to die in these communities the way we're dying. The problem is we've left everything in the hands of somebody else. So when it goes wrong, we could just blame them for it. So we play defense. We just don't have offensive strategy, right? We have to figure out how to play offense here. As a matter of fact, when we get the ball, we so busy trying to get a ball back to them, so we can play defense. You know what I mean?
All right, wait. Well, you have to break that one down for the folks who might be a little, because, we get the ball and we can't advance the ball because we're too busy trying to give the ball back to them.
Yeah, we trying to give it back because we good at defense. It's like we organize we fight for a civilian review board, then we get one, then the people get on the board and they still fighting for a civilian review board. Like, it makes no sense now, right? You have to be on the board now, advancing that to the levels that you need to advance it, so it becomes real, that it works, that those things. And then what happens is when the people don't do that, the people look at that and say, "Oh, that can't happen. I knew that wasn't going to work." Well, we ain't never tried to make it work, right? Because we already resolved with the idea that it's going to fail because the system is just too big and powerful for us, which is nonsense, right? It's nonsense. And so we have to play offense. We at some point we're gonna get the ball. We're gonna fight. At some point we're gonna get the ball. Now we gotta run the ball. We gotta advance that. We gotta advance it. We gotta advance it.
All right. You said two things that is a great segue to the Dr. King conversation. That is, you can't score points on defense. So we have to learn how to stop being so defensive, right? One. Two, understanding when you've won, or understanding or knowing, realizing, coming to that you're in the position to win, right? And why I want to connect that to Dr. King is, in 1963, Dr. King said, "I have a dream," right? In 1967, Dr. King was saying, unless we get a check, the dream is going to be a nightmare, right? His politics shifted. His actual, work shifted. The impact he had on policy shifted between 63 and 67. And then when I look in 2021 and I see, a Mayor Ras J Baraka, when I see a Vice President Kamala Harris, when I see a former President Barack Obama, when I see Rashida Tlaib, and I see AOC, and I see, all these Bernie Sanders, all these different folks who have, progressive or left politics, who are singing a lot of the things that Dr. King preached. I'm wondering, have we won and don't even realize it?
Well, those ideas have come closer to mainstream, right? They've become, they're more acceptable, and they can't like demonize the ideas anymore. So they become more and more mainstream. And so what we have to figure out what we need to do is how to make those ideas practical and pragmatic, so people in our communities, working people, embrace them, right? Embrace them and start pushing for those things. The same way they push for an 8-hour day, the same way they push for, the increase in minimum wage, the same way we push for all kind of policy changes, whether it's the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, you have to push for it so people begin to embrace it. You can't, you see what happens now is people discover something in their mind in this generation, this era, and because it goes around fast on the internet, they discover something. Last month, last year, 2 years ago, you didn't think that, right? You just came upon this yourself. And now you're demonizing everybody who don't think that way, which is wrong. When what you're supposed to be doing is winning people over to your struggle, not isolating people from your struggle. You have to win more and more people up. You have to win people up. You have to win people in the church. You have to win Christians, Muslims, 5%ers, everybody. You got to win them over to these points, right? To bring them closer to your ideas, so you begin to push these things. So they can't. 10, 15 years ago, Bernie Sanders saying he was a socialist would get him, thrown out of the
you written off.
He'd be in trouble. At one point, we had a House on Un-American Activities. You couldn't even say stuff like that, right? You lose your job, all kind of stuff. He would never be in Congress. He wouldn't be a United States senator saying none of those things, right? Yeah. I mean, there were people who ran in small pockets here and there that won little things around, but it wasn't mainstream. It's become more mainstream now, and it's not as mainstream as it could be, but it's definitely more mainstream than it was. So we did win some struggle. We advanced some struggles, right? We advanced those struggles, and we have to continue to advance these struggles and understand that we have to really have faith. Just people of color have faith in our ability to lead these struggles. Faith in our ability to talk to the people in our community and push our own agenda, and not wait for people to come in here and sell us what they're selling, and then we hook up with them because we're tired of quote unquote identity politics, right? Yeah. Right. We have to push what's good for us in our community. It's called self-determination.
Yeah. Another fine word that we really need to focus on, along with Nia. Dr. King. I want to put this in the right context, because we're talking about like something, the historicity of what I'm going to say gets lost, right? But I like to follow the through line, right? And Joseph McCarthy, Roy Cohn, for those who don't know, Joseph McCarthy was the guy, he was a senator back in the late 40s who ran around accusing people of being communist, right? Right. His chief counsel was a man by the name of Roy Cohn, who would end up being the lawyers for all the mafia guys in the 70s and the 80s. Roy Cohn helped develop Nixon. Well, he was partially behind Nixon, but he helped develop Roger Stone. He introduced Roger Stone to Trump, right? So when we see what's happening with Trump, his brand of politics, you see a through line that goes all the way back to the 40s. Now, in reference to Dr. King, a lot of the folks on that side of the political line would like to say Dr. King was a Republican. Right. And right now, the historicity, the historical context between why, Black people, African Americans tend to be Democrats. A lot of folks are confused as to what happened and why that is. And I was hoping that you could expound on that. Yeah,
I mean, it's simple. I think, like, I had a debate with somebody a while ago when Bernie was first running and all of that, about this idea that Black people are being tricked by the Democratic Party. And I said, well, that's really insulting, right? It's insulting to my mother, to my grandmother. It's insulting because these people, they lived in some very dangerous times, right? Yeah. And there was a time when you go in the South, people have a picture of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Jesus. That's right. On the wall. People started moving into the Democratic Party because FDR, right? Because of all of those social programs that were being created, even when the Democrats were the Dixiecrats. Yeah. They still had the Dixiecrats there. All these social programs that were coming to working people, they began to embrace those things, right? And so at the end of the day, ideology is important, but when we started off in the beginning, bread and butter is more important. You have to feed people and tell them why you feed them, right? So at the end of the day, those bread and butter issues began to bring people to the Democratic Party. FDR began to bring people to that whole section of the Democrats began to do that, and then their turn to begin to support civil rights, right? Kennedy and the whole civil rights movement, supporting, standing there with King and sending the military down in the South. All of those things helped, people. The same reason why Black people in the 1800s were Republican, right? Because when the South was, when it was lynchings in the South, the Republican Party sent the troops to the South to protect, folks that were previously enslaved and all this other kind of stuff to push for the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment and all that. That was the Republican Party, a different kind of Republican Party at that time, right? And that idea moved into the Democratic Party in the 30s and 40s with FDR.
Yeah, I like to clarify for folks, it's not really a matter of Republican and Democrat. It's a matter of progressive and conservative.
That's it. It's a matter of issues that people believe that's going to benefit them in their lives, right? How have people been voting against things since we started voting?
We never got a chance to vote for something.
Right. We've been voting against people who are trying to kill us. Right. They're trying to kill us outright, literally kill us, like murder us, lynch us, prevent us from getting housing, segregate us in poor, terrible schools, all of these things. And anybody that was opposed to those things, we gravitated towards them. That anybody who said, this is wrong, so we're going to support this guy. You know what I mean? And that's basically been the history of what's going on. And look, are people going to vote predominantly Democrat? Because look who the Republicans put in front of us. Right? No and the issues and the things they support and push. So it's not really about Republican and Democrat. It's clearly about our survival in this country. It's about our survival. Right? I'm going to be with the person that's with me. And they don't have to believe everything I believe. So it's not, we don't sit down. My grandmother and people voted. They didn't sit down with these people and say, I agree with point A, point B, point C, point D, point E. You believe this, you believe that. I agree with you. You don't agree with that. It's not that complex. Right? It's simple. Can I go to school here? Right? Is it okay for people? Will you lock people up who are trying to lynch me? Are you going to say lynching is wrong? Right? All these basic kind of things that we've been fighting for, that we now have to begin to advance beyond the basic things to more concrete and substantive issues, because we're in a place in history now where we can begin to fight for substantive issues like reparations, like other things that we could have never even fought for, even when Kennedy was the president.
That's right.
You couldn't have fought for those things at that time.
We was in the middle of 100. We were in the middle of 100 years of lynching when Kennedy was president.
Right. We couldn't fight for that FDR. While they was giving money to Europe after the war for the Marshall Plan, building Europe up, our communities were segregated, right? And money was being taken from us, not invested in our community. We were being redlined. All these other things were going on.
Now, I've heard you bring that up over the last 10 years, how Europe got the Marshall Plan, which was about rebuilding Europe. And in America, the New Deal policies of FDR a lot of times explicitly excluded African Americans. So when we get to 1967 and you hear Dr. King talking about it's time for us to get our check, it's because Dr. King understood that the white community in America had received investment. They had received that check, through the Mississippi, Tennessee Valley thing that, from, the GI Bill to, that's how the suburbs got built. So when we hear in the 1950s was the happy days coming out of World War II, is because of the New Deal policies, which were also branded socialist, but were directed to, white communities. Dr. King in 67 was like, it's time for us to get our check.
Right. So even when FDR created these national programs, white supremacy was at its rampant height at that point. Right. So even when the programs was pushed, they would, even if it didn't come out of the federal government, when it got down to state and local government, it was completely segregated and kept away from us, right? So they created a whole opportunity. Housing for white working class and middle class Americans was subsidized by the United States government.
Yes.
In the suburbs, they gave them low percentage rates in housing purposefully and deliberately to build up the economy, and they should have done that. They should have just included us. Right. Our housing investment was called projects, right? We had tall buildings that they built, and they put us all on top of one another. This is what was going on throughout the nation, and so Newark had more projects per capita than any other city in the nation. So then we became Brick City. Right? So at the end of the day, that was our housing model. Their housing model was suburbs. And then they had, in order to make the suburbs sustain themselves, They had to build roads, right? So they built highways through our communities.
280.
Even prestigious black communities, they tore the housing down. 78, 280 here in Newark. They ran these things up into the suburbs so people could continue to work in the city and live out in the suburbs at the same time. So they took the wealth out of these communities deliberately and moved them into the suburban communities. And now we're paying for it today. Our school system was affected. Our roads were affected. Our tax base was affected. Investment in jobs and housing. We're still repairing ourselves. Nobody invested in our community. And then when that happened, that is when we began to seize authority, right? We began to seize power in these cities. They began to explode all over America because of Martin Luther King and because other things. They've been burning them down. And so
talking about the assassination of Dr. King in 68.
Yeah, white folks began to leave out. They began to leave. They began to leave. In 1966, the year before Newark Rebellion, Newark was predominantly black. The rest of the people began to leave. They began to leave because of the GI Bill and the federal government subsidized their exit.
Wow. Yeah. No one looks at it like that. Right. No one brings that up.
But that's what happened. And then right when we became and so let's take Newark for example. We were the majority, but all of the power was still in the hands of the white minority. Like South Africa, police, government, social service, social work, all these things. We still were unemployed, right? And the war was over. We came to these cities for the war effort, and we began to make money in the war effort, right? And we began to establish ourselves in our community.
So you said we came to these cities because of the war effort. You gotta explain that so people understand, because there's great migrations of people that are to benefit either government or corporate. Yeah. But that great migration, people, communities being uplifted, uprooted from where they are to have to go here, but are never compensated for that shift. No, we add value. We help create. When you say we came to the cities for the war machine,
sure, because that's where the jobs were. That's where the jobs were. We came into these communities, just like the first migration in the 1900s, running from the boll weevil and Klan and terror. We came looking for employment and running from terror, right? And then the second migration, took place in the second war effort, just like the first one was around the first war effort, the first World War. The second one was around the Second World War, right? So we moved to these communities. They subsidized white folks to leave, and then we rebelled. Like we rebelled in these cities, and then the ones that were left, they got the heck out of here too, right? And so they took the wealth, the tax base with them, right? And so then our school systems went down because we had no revenue, no taxes and the state wasn't willing to subsidize it. It wasn't until Abbott versus Burke, all the way in the 80s, that they began to say that the state has to subsidize education.
Again, for our viewership who don't know, property taxes is what funds education. So the more property owners you have, the larger your tax base, the more you could support the school system.
Even if it's corporate and commercial taxes. But the problem was the businesses left too. Newark had Bambergers. The Macy's Day Parade was in Newark first. Right? Before it was in New York. It was in Newark. All of those businesses left. They left the community. They left. We had Woolworths, Mace, Bamberg, all these things up and down.
The best water in the country, mind you.
That's right.
That's why all the beer manufacturers go. They were in Newark, New Jersey because of the water. It was the best water in the country.
That's right. And all these people bailed. And the interesting thing is when that happened, black mayors began to take these cities. They took cities with a huge tax deficit, right? With the resources dwindled and a wealth and host of problems and issues that they had to try to figure out how to solve. 50 some odd years later, we're still trying to solve those issues with a little bit more help. But, if you was Ken Gibson in 1970, or Richard Hatcher, or all of these people, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. It's still difficult because people expect you to do things in these cities. So you're fighting the apparatus that's trying to prevent you from getting things done. And you're almost fighting your own people because you can't get it done as quickly as they want it to get done. at the same time because we have no strategy and no tactics collectively to get it done, right? And so we're pushing against this stuff. We're pushing against this stuff at the same time. So it's incredibly difficult because what you're trying to do is keep people alive long enough to transform a system that was designed that you die. And so it's huge. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and to expect people to fix in 4 years what it took over 100 years to create is almost, nonsensical, right? You have to have a forward plan, and you have to. And then what happened? A lot of these black leaders who got into office at that time, because they was the first, they wanted to be the last too, right? So.
You don't bring that next generation up. You don't support because you're trying to be the first, the only, the greatest of all time. You know how we do. You know how we do. How we do.
No continuity, man. No continuity. Yeah. It's the drum major instinct King talked about. There's no continuity, right? And we have to create continuity in systems and development and leadership in class and folks to push. There's no reason that I should leave office and not prepare or make sure that somebody who comes here is able to run the leg further. We are in competition with the people that come after us.
Well, that said, speaking into the future, do you see someone behind you that you want to do?
I think there's a lot of smart people out here who are in politics now that can do this job, that that need to get ready and get prepared to do this. I'm not listen, I understand dialectics, brother. I know that there's the old and the new and the up and the down, the left and the right. At some point the old gives way to the new. And so instead of making it an antagonistic contradiction, you should invite it. And so it's not one, and begin to move on to your new place. The problem is we don't have a new place. People leave these offices, they leave physically sick, depressed, worn down, broke,
holding on.
Yeah. They leave these places, they leave these offices destroyed. Destroyed, right? I know that, and people always talk about the movement and all this stuff. I know the kids of all these parents and all these folks that were out here struggling. These kids were beat in this thing, man. There's some kids who don't even want to hear about the movement no more because of what they've been through, right? In this thing, right? Their families, right? These people sacrificed their families. Some of these people went to jail and sacrificed all of this stuff. And we don't understand. We romanticize this stuff, and there's nothing romantic about it. This is some ugly stuff people were involved in. And coming into office, if you really honestly are trying to make changes here in this thing, it's going to affect your well-being. It's going to affect your well-being. Unless you just here to move on to something else and be famous. But at the end of the day, if you're really trying to get into this thing and make some changes, it's going to wear on you.
Yeah.
It's going to wear on you. Sure, it's going to wear on you.
So I want to give a special shout out to Access DGTL for advertising this show this afternoon. Madison 24 Hours of Peace Special Edition with the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Ras Baraka. Access Digital enables customers to connect with brands all over downtown Newark. If you want to advertise your business, product, or service on the Newark Wi-Fi splash page, contact accessdgtl.com/advertise. Big shout out to them for supporting Madison TV, the 24 Hours of Peace edition. Now, before we go on, I got caught up in the conspiracy theory world, Mr. Mayor. I was lost for a minute. I was bugging. I don't know if you remember in 2015, I broke my hand and I had to have reconstructive surgery of the hand and wrist that year for 24 Hours of Peace. I was walking around with a cast. I was in bad shape. And luckily, my mother and my now wife beat me in the head to get Obamacare. And I was fighting them. I thought they was going to put a chip in me, Raz. I thought they was going to chip me, Raz.
Hey, listen.
Yeah. Well, thank God. I listened to the wisdom in my family, and I went and signed up for Obamacare, because 3 months after I signed up is when I hurt my hand. And if I didn't have, the ACA in place, I would have been in bad shape,
Right.
So big shout out to President Obama and everybody who fought for that. But that, that goes to, where I'm going with this, with, former President Barack Obama. We knock him for a lot. We criticize him a lot.
Sure.
We feel that there's a lot that could have gotten done that didn't get done. However, your work with him among this coalition of mayors around the country,
right,
you've been able to see firsthand the work that he's done, what he's been able to implement. The and I'm learning, since Trump has been in the office, this number 45, it forced me to really dig in to what Obama actually did. And I was hoping that you could highlight some of these things and how it's helped transform the Newark community directly, so people understand what Barack Obama did in real time.
Consent decrees is number one. Like just putting a consent decree, that's like putting the federal government in your state, in your city, to monitor your police, to make sure they're not beating, killing people arbitrarily and wantonly, holding them in abeyance. And that's number one, right? That we benefited from it tremendously and still are benefiting from it. The whole reentry piece around federal reentry and making sure that, people were coming back into our community with education, with employment, with housing, all of those things, and just really attacking some of the bringing people together to attack some of the inequities and things that were going on in America. He was trying to address those things. You have to understand, this man was the president of the empire. This thing has been in place before him, right? And it's going to be after him. He was in the empire, right? There are things that are going on in that thing that he himself have to wrestle and struggle with. I know that because I wrestle with small things here, trying to get things done, because there are people in this system, in this apparatus, that are trying to continue what they've been trying to do, and you trying to step in the way of that. And you see how gray his hair was when he came the heck out of there.
Oh yeah. When in black, when I left out gray.
Trying to wrestle with this stuff, and so he made some decisions that he probably made some decisions that he not happy with, and he probably and I know he fought for some things, whether it's healthcare that many more Americans have than they did before, right? Whether it's the marches towards the increase in the minimum wage that we didn't have, that people are having for, whether it's equality in the workplace, women getting paid the same amount of money as men, whether the fighting around the LGBTQ community, all of these things were going on in the Obama presidency. Now you didn't elect Malcolm X, you didn't elect Che Guevara, you elected Barack Obama. Like, and people have to understand that, right? You have to be able to be smart enough to understand how to struggle in this thing. There's segments. You don't expect Obama to do what Malcolm X did or done. You expect Obama to do what Obama can do in the empire.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And then out here, we have to put together a strategy and a plan to support him, right? And I would always tell people, we have to be sophisticated enough to criticize or challenge the president without condemning him, right? And we have not gotten there yet, because what you do when you do that is you give a platform to our enemies. So I was at a thing with Al Sharpton, and the guy got up and said, President Obama is just like George Bush. I said, I got up and said, that's not true. And for you to give that kind of analysis is confusion, and we can't accept that. That's not true. You don't have a clear analysis. There's no way you're going to tell me that George Bush, either the father or the son, would have attempted to do any of the things that President Obama did. None, zero, right? None. So you can say that you wish he did more.
Can you talk about My Brother's Keeper?
Yeah, My Brother's Keeper is an example of one of the things that we have that's still going on, by the way. Even he has the My Brother's Keeper Foundation. And the idea was to begin to make sure more Black and brown boys did not go to jail and was now given a pipeline to careers, to college, to all kind of entrepreneurship, to all kind of things. A national mentorship program, plus an effort to change policies locally that inhibited Black and brown boys from advancing. And so this movement was going on around the country. It was cut short, obviously, because he left, but he still has the foundation that does My Brother's Keeper now.
Yeah. Now I know I don't have too much more time with you, but can keeping in line with this particular point, critical race theory is something that was, it's a theory that it proves that white supremacy is the problem in terms of Black success in this country. And then under the Barack Obama presidency, there were initiatives on the state and local level in various cities to try to address, systemic racism, white supremacy, and what have you. And the Trump administration took active measures to reverse that. Sure. And then again, identifying your enemies, your friends, and your allies, saying that Barack Obama has done nothing, again, is totally untrue, because when we talk about critical race theory, and I'm hoping you can pick up from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a poor analysis, right? And usually we're competing for the attention of the masses of people. And instead of organize them, we demonize the people who we believe got their attention. Mm-hmm. And instead of trying to figure out why people are listening to them and begin to try to do the same kind of thing, ultimately, white supremacy is not only dangerous to Black community, it's dangerous to America at this point, right? At this point, America cannot move forward because white supremacy is in its way. Economically, there are millions of people that are outside of the labor force because of white supremacy. There are people who are not being educated and moved into the tech space because of white supremacy, right? That means there's less money being invested in the economy because of white supremacy. The imagination and all of the things that people can offer to society are curbed and twisted because of white supremacy, right? You can see it's getting so bad they actually ran into the Capitol, right? White supremacy is the enemy of
the United States of America. Yeah,
it is the sickness that they fostered and allowed to linger that is now rotting the country to the core. Yeah, to the core, is ripping the country apart to the core because people refuse to deal with race. W.E.B. Du Bois said the problem with the 20th century is the color line, and it's still the color line. It's still the color line. Black people, brown people in this country have been marginalized, have purposefully and deliberately in every system. That's why when people say, I debate, we need to abolish the police because it's inherently racist. I say, well, if you take that logic, then you're saying abolish all of the systems in America because they're all inherently racist. The educational system, the health system, the social services system, it's all inherently racist. At its foundation, it was built on the dehumanization of individuals, of human beings. And history was taught, and philosophy was taught, and science was taught under the premise that there was some people that were naturally superior than other people, and it's rotten this place to the core. So it's not just about the police. The reason why we focus on the police because they got guns, right? So it's all of this stuff. All of this stuff needs to be challenged. All of it needs to be challenged.
Yeah, and I thank you for sitting in the seat that you have, for dedicating your life, to changing the condition of your people, of our people. Newark community definitely, is better off, just in terms of violence. Because when you inherited the mayorship in, was that 6-7 years ago, Newark was, capital of murder every year in America. That's right. Now the crime rate, is the lowest that it's been since '67, since before the Newark riots, and that testament to these strategies that you've been able to implement over the last 6-7 years. So salute to you, Mayor.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Man, this has been awesome. This has been awesome. Big shout out to everybody that checked in. I know you got something special from this show. This is the 24-hour edition, 24 hours of peace edition of Madism TV. You've been listening to the Honorable Mayor Ras J Baraka, and once again, salute, sir.
Peace, brother.
Peace to the family.